Picture this. I'm in the early stages of pregnancy with twins, so I'm still in the nausea stage. And I get this ridiculous idea that I want to grow dahlias for the first time. Before falling pregnant, I'd started to build a cottage garden with 6, I think, maybe 8 raised beds in it. And I was determined to have dahlias in those beds to cut and bring into my home after my children had been born. This started a love affair with growing, cutting and displaying dahlias that still goes on till this day, 15 years later. So welcome to today's how-to. We're growing dahlias. We're starting the tubers in pots, and then I'll give you all the information that you'll need to know on how to transplant them into the ground, how to tend to them, how to cut them, and I'll give you some lovely examples of how to display them.
Acting like a wild man, sleeping like a child.
Why do we start our dahlias in pots? Well, look, you can start them in the ground, that's absolutely fine. I find here in the heart of the English countryside that the weather is a little unpredictable from the start of the year up until sometimes the end of April. So I start them in pots so that I can just have a little more control over how they grow. Dahlias are similar to ranunculus in as much as you want to look after the tubers. You do not want them to get too wet, otherwise they'll rot. And you don't want them to get too frozen. And you certainly don't want your new shoots and your new young flowers to get frostbitten. You can grow them outside, in pots, in a frost-free protected area, and you can also grow them in greenhouses. You just need to look after them for a little bit, and you only plant them out when all of the frosts have passed. Let's get our tubers out and we'll start to plant them up into pots. So I'm back here. You'll see that I planted the sweet peas in this pot and they will grow up over that arch there. And I'm going to start this dahlia in this pot here. It's a fairly large pot, but that's for a good reason. The first dahlia I'm going to plant is one called Mango Madness. I bought it from Farmer Gracie and it is huge. It can't even be described as a dinner plate dahlia. These flowers grow up to 25 centimetres across. So they are large flowers, which are amazing because you can have one in a vase and it can just be a centerpiece on its own. So as we're starting them off in pots, we need to make sure that we've got the right soil in the pots. This was a clean pot. I actually had some soil in there from last year, but I've topped it up quite a bit. I've got drainage at the bottom, and in here I've got a mixture of a good quality topsoil and a good quality organic compost. I've made sure that the soil I've used is quite light and is mixed through with perlite. The key to starting dahlias off in pots is that you don't let the pots and the soil that they're in get too soggy. Again, we don't want to rot the tubers. It has to drain and it has to be free flowing. Gently take them out of any packaging that you have. Don't rip a bag or any kind of packaging from them. In fact, I might just tear this like that so it doesn't get caught, because you've got these very delicate parts of the tuber that you don't want to break off. Here we are. Looks like a big insect. What a beauty. So let's take a closer look at our dahlia tuber. Like I said, it looks like this weird type of alien or like an undersea creature. All of these roots and these little tubers that are sprouting off the stem all have energy contained in them. And that energy is to produce those beautiful flowers that we know and love. When we start them off in pots, the growth is going to come from around this area here. You'll see little eyes, almost like the eyes that you might get on a potato that's been in the cupboard for too long. There's a little eye just there. Do you see what I mean when I say they look like little sprouting potatoes? But this is where it will start. The growth, I mean. All of the energy will come up through the tuber and then out around the base of the stem. And it's for that reason that I personally, because I know that there are millions of ways to grow these, but I personally don't bury this all the way in. I don't cover it up to the top of the stem. I'll show you exactly how I plant my dahlia tubers up. We are first of all going to dig a hole so that we can put our tuber into it. And it is fairly deep, certainly as deep as the tuber, maybe just a few centimetres deeper. And of course, it has to be wide enough so that we don't break off any of the roots or anything like that. Still got a couple of weeds in here. There we are. I think that is deep enough and large enough. The depth of the hole that you dig into the pot will absolutely be determined by the size of the tuber. And if you buy different varieties of dahlia, then you'll see the difference in size. This one being, you know, essentially a dinner plate dahlia, although slightly larger, is huge. It's really rather large. Some of the other ones, say like the pom-pom variety, they are smaller, and you'll see that. You only want to dig a hole and place the tuber into a space that is as big as the tuber itself. We're not digging it into the ground. We're placing it in and covering it, surrounding it with soil. So there's our tuber with all its legs, and then it just goes in like that. You can pop that one down very gently, and then its stem stays upright, and then we just fold the soil in. That reminds me of the Schitt's Creek episode when they were folding in the ingredients. That was my lockdown show, and I need to watch it again. So yes, we just gently pour the soil around the tuber like that. Now you can see I've left a little bit of the top out like that. Leaving it with the stem out above the soil is for a reason. It's because, like I said, the eyes sort of come up from there. I know gardeners that do plant them right up to there, and they have great success with them. I've just never done it that way, and I've always been able to grow dahlias really successfully. So I just stick to what I know. But I would love, love, love to have your hints and tips and the ways that you grow dahlias. Just leave a comment below. I think we are all in this gardening game together, and if you have some advice, then brilliant, especially if it's worked really well for you. And I'm always up for trying new things, but this has never failed me, and because I like the flowers, I just tend to stick with it. Once you've got your tuber in place, gently pack the soil in around the base of the tuber. You don't want it to be baggy in the pot at all, or sort of flapping about. Can you see I'm doing it with the back of my hand like that? So it's quite secure, but it's not too forceful. I'm just going to use both hands just to gently push it down, just to make sure that it is in place, but it's not being strangled in there. Just a gentle sprinkling of compost around the top like that. It's mainly around the edges, so there we are, just to fill any large gaps. And that is what my dahlia tubers look like when they're planted up in pots. I'm going to water the tuber in just lightly, just around the outside. I might disturb some of the soil, but I can always pop it back. It's a large pot, so watering it generously, but of course it will drain out. So our dahlia tubers are now in pots. So what happens now? You need to keep the pots frost-free, sheltered, not too hot, and certainly not too cold. We've watered them, and you really don't need to add that much water. If they're outside and they get rained on, that will be fine. The drainage is there, and you may want to water a little bit every week or so. But the trick is to not let them freeze and not let them rot. The most exciting thing is when you see the shoots come out from the top of the tuber. Like I said, they start with those little eyes like potatoes, and then you start to see them shooting leaves, and then of course the flowers later on in the summer. So some of my top tips for being successful with dahlias: to avoid them getting too leggy and not flowering properly, you need to make sure that they have adequate light and warmth. You don't want them to sort of almost bolt. They'll get that there in that position before I transplant them, and they will also get that when I transplant them, when I move them from the pots into the beds. The beds that I'm going to plant them in are along the front of the house, so they get several hours of sun a day, but then the sun sort of moves off somewhere else at night time, and they have a break in the morning, so they'll be fine where I'm going to put them. If you are growing your tubers in a greenhouse, you'll need to start hardening them off. So leave them outside. Certainly from now onwards, it's fairly warm, and unless we have a hard frost, then I would leave my pots with the dahlia tubers outside during the day and then just pop them back into the greenhouse at night time. The thing that you really want to avoid at this time, because it's a delicate balance between it being spring and into summer and then reverting back to winter, is a hard frost. If the plants are sheltered and they've got some shelter around them, then they'll be okay. If they are quite exposed and you do think that there is a hard frost coming in, get some light fleece and cover the pots with that, certainly overnight. When your plants are growing and they reach about a foot tall, you want to snip off or pinch out the top growth. That encourages the plant to grow sort of outwards as opposed to just upwards. And that also stops the plant from becoming too leggy. So how do you plant them when you're planting them out? You plant them in the ground in the same way and with the same depth as you planted them in the pot. So that's a good thing to remember. Plant the same in the ground as you planted in the pot. Space the plants about 2 feet apart, especially the larger dahlias. You won't believe how big these plants can get if they grow successfully. They're really like shrubs. And they're amazing because they give you so many flowers, but you don't want to crowd them. Give them room to grow. Stake your dahlias if they're very, very tall, if they're the larger variety, almost like you would stake a peony. I found that I didn't have to stake the pom-pom variety or the smaller variety. They were really healthy and they grew really well, but I would definitely stake any kind of dinner plate dahlia. And if you find that they're getting a bit wobbly and a little bit unsteady on their feet, then just pop a stake in. You might like to get a very tall, thin green cane or a very thin bamboo cane, and they just tie it gently. It's almost like something to lean on as opposed to staking it in. And you can add compost or mulch around the base of the plant, not only to feed but also to suppress the weeds around it. Once all the possibility of a frost has passed, then of course get them out into the ground. But if you're going to keep them in pots, then that's great too. Make sure that the pots don't get too hot and you don't bake them. And of course, make sure that we don't drown them and allow the tubers to rot. But whether they're in pots or whether they're in the ground, we still need to water them. If they're in the ground, a good water throughout the summer months, twice a week. Unless we have the most incredible summer and it's absolutely boiling, then keep an eye on them, and it might be more often than that. It's just, again, you have to play it by ear. You don't want them to get any mildew and you don't want them to rot. But if we're having an amazing summer, you also need to water them. And the same as in pots, you'll have to water them a bit more often if they're in the pots. But again, you have to play it by ear. I'm sort of speaking to like a global audience where all of your planting conditions are going to be so different to mine. Watch out for slugs, watch out for snails, you can just pick them off. I find that dahlias get earwigs. I don't know about you, but I find they get earwigs. So watch out for that. Watch out for mildew. That's why we need to give them enough room around them so it doesn't get all mouldy and damp in there. Cut the flowers. They will cut. They're cut and come. So the more you cut, the more will come. So bring them inside, give them to a friend, take them to a farm shop, but the more you cut the flowers, the more will come. If you don't manage to use your flowers, then dead head. They will keep you going through until first frosts. They keep going and going and going right through until October. I mean, they're amazing. I truly hope that this Dahlia tutorial has been helpful. I would love to know your successes, your failures with dahlias. I'd just love to know your stories about growing them, the variety. I know that for a long time, the Café au lait was super popular. And I've grown that a million times. You've seen it at the start of this video. That was a cafe au lait, and they are absolutely delicious. I've moved on to peach tones this summer, so I'm looking forward to showing you them. I bought all sorts of varieties: the dinner plate, the pom pom, and then the more daisy type. I don't know what that's called. I'll have a look. You join me on my main vlog every Sunday for like the long one. You'll see me growing my different types of dahlia right through the summer. So hit like and hit subscribe to watch my dahlia journey this summer in the English countryside. I've been growing dahlias for 15 years now. They have never failed me in growing or in giving me pure joy when I cut them and bring them into the house. They look like such a complex flower, but in actual fact, they're so simple and they do so much of the hard work for you. As long as they're happy, they'll give, give, give. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Welcome to the sunny days in the English countryside, and I'll see you again on Sunday. Lots of love.